Writers have more stories to tell than those that are written on a page. Join me as I talk about my life, loves, and inspiration behind my work so far, and maybe even a sneak peek into stories yet to come. Hi, I'm Chris Blay, and this is Dead Men Talk. Welcome to another very special episode of Dead Men Talk, and I mean this is for more reasons than just one. This is a very, very special episode for me because, as you'll see, this will really hark back to one of the main reasons why I started this podcast in the first place. I get to welcome Jonathan Willis and Chris Harris, who are the founders of the House of Frankenstein experience that's just opened in Bath. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Chris. It's lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you. And just to kind of touch on, sort of give a little bit of background, I suppose, to why, as much as your attraction is amazing and what drew me to it in the first place and why I really wanted to get you on. I'm a horror writer as well. And obviously, like many horror fans, writers, whatever, Frankenstein played a big part in inspiring me and influencing where I wanted to go with my writing. The reason I started the podcast is because I want to tell my stories behind the stories. And what you guys have done with House of Frankenstein is you're doing exactly that with probably the biggest gothic horror story ever. So it's very fitting, especially on Friday the 13th as well, that I get to talk to you. So I guess really just to start off is kind of taking it right back to the beginning before we get to the actual, the House of Frankenstein attraction itself. Is where did your relationships begin with the story? So where did you discover it and develop an affinity with it?
Chris?
Wow. Well, me, look at us. We're of a certain age. So I mean, I sort of grew up with Hammer House of Horrors and sort of obviously sort of the Boris Karloff. Well, I didn't grow up with the Boris Karloff film, but I was familiar with it. But so my interest in Frankenstein, I suppose, started then with the sort of probably with the derivatives, not the original story, whether it was Boris Karloff or I said the Hammer films particularly. So, but I think it's a strange one, Frankenstein. Whoever you are, you're aware of it in some capacity. And I think even if you're not a horror fan, there's a certain affection towards the creature because he just plays out throughout the whole of the world now in terms of popular culture. He's so prevalent everywhere in advertising and marketing and clothing and wherever it is, he's there. So but mine was probably Hammer and Boris Karloff.
Oh, cool.
My part of my history, I mean, me and Chris have known each other 30 years. More than 30 years, but my part of what I ended up disappearing into is making in horror movies. So we've made a lot of low-budget horror movies for Sony Entertainment, and but we have never made a Frankenstein one. But that could come at some time. Chris and I met in the theatre, so that's part of why the attraction is theatrical. It's like going back to our roots of the theatre. And then we've both done film and video, and there's elements of that here too. And we've both been writers, and so there's elements of literature. So it's taking all our history and bringing it together and putting all those elements into this attraction.
Yeah, brilliant. So going from obviously your love of the story and way back when, before this was even an idea, how did this idea come about then? What kind of, aside from your love of it, I suppose, what did you think, why did you think it required to be, put out there in an attraction like this?
Well, first of all, Chris, we obviously get together regularly. Chris came to Bath about 12 years ago. I came 7 years ago. And I think it was just a meeting in a pub over a pint, and Chris saying, "Did you know that Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein here?" And I didn't, and a lot of other people don't.
I didn't. Yeah.
So it was a revelation, and then you explore that a little bit, and there is a plaque now to that event from 1816, in where the pump rooms is now. She was at this property called Five Abbey Churchyard, where they took lodgings, and that's where she wrote Frankenstein. And there's but that's all there is. There is nothing else to celebrate the fact that that novel, which is one of the 100 best, most influential novels of all time, a novel that's never been out of print from its first printing and is considered the world's first science fiction novel, was written here, and there was nobody celebrating it. And so when Chris mentioned that, it occurred to me that opening an attraction in celebration of that was something that we simply had to do.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, 10 minutes prior to me telling Jonathan, I wasn't aware of it either. I think it's been a well-kept secret. And I think it was a strange one, actually, because it goes back many, many years. My nieces were very interested in these pop-up horror attractions that appeared about 10 or 12 years ago, I guess. And I was fascinated about how interested they were in it and how much enjoyment they got of it. But these things only lasted for like a couple of weeks. This is when sort of, that seasonal horror attraction was in its infancy. I mean, nowadays they're popping up all over the place. And there was a little seed that was planted in the head going, God, imagine if there was a permanent attraction that sort of just investigated fears and phobias. It's like, I think I had some grand title in my head. I don't know, the Museum of the Exploration of Fear and Phobia, something ridiculous like that. I don't know. But it was a little seed that was planted. And then, as John mentioned, I've been living here a few years, and suddenly, I realized that Mary Shelley wrote a lot of Frankenstein here. And those two little seeds just connect, those little thoughts connected. I thought, oh my God, we could tell the Mary Shelley story, but in a sensory environment. And Jonathan's, I've known Jonathan for many years, and Jonathan's background is very entrepreneurial. I might sit an idea for a very long time, and Jonathan acts quite quickly. And so we just chatted through this idea, and the more we talked about it, and the more we found out about Mary Shelley and started investigating it, it just seemed like, how has this not been told anywhere? Why has it not been told in Switzerland, where she started it? Why not in Marlow, where she finished it? Why not in Bath? Why not in Bournemouth, where she's buried? Or anywhere in the world where Frankenstein is celebrated? No one's thought of it, and it just seemed like this is the perfect place to do it.
So this is the first of its kind. Am I right in saying?
Certain Mary Shelley,
brilliant.
I mean, there's a waxworks museum in America, and but in terms of actually the Mary Shelley story, if you think you've got Arthur Conan Doyle is celebrated, Dickens is celebrated, Jane Austen is celebrated, but not Mary Shelley. And you think this is a visionary.
And talking of Switzerland, where it was conceived, we do have our own merchandise, which is Frankenstein Toblerone, which I shall place here.
Product placement. Go ahead.
Bit of product placement. Yes.
So I think it's one of those. It's just like now it's actually we've got it up and running. You do stop and think, gosh, how has it taken this long for this to actually sort of come about? And it's brilliant. I think we both love that fact that we've got this off the ground and done it.
But I think one of the exciting things from both our points of view is what Chris just mentioned in terms of permanence. We've both worked in the theatre. When you do a theatre show, you put your heart and soul and energies and time and money and effort into it, and it lasts for a run, and that's it. And then it disappears, unless it's the mousetrap, which is rare. And if you're doing a film, then it has a peak, and then it disappears into the bargain basement bin very, very quickly. With this, it could be here for 100 years. So it's working on something that's theatrical and multimedia that could last for a long time, and that's fun.
That was going to be you've probably answered one of my questions there, actually, one that I had even before I visited it, because just to let everyone know who is watching, listening to this, my interest in this was piqued enough that I was there on opening day. I had my tickets well in advance. I had to see this as soon as I knew there was something even dedicated to Frankenstein. Before I even knew that it really delved into Mary Shelley's story, I knew I would be there. And my mind was really opened up when I got in there. There were many, many things I came away with that I never knew before. But one of the things was I was just kind of wondering, going around it, is this something that is here for a set amount of time? Is it going to tour around? Is it something that you could take about, or is it there to stay sort of in Bath?
It's not something that we can pick up physically.
No.
Tour. It's a Georgian, 5-story Georgian building. I've seen the Monty Python film, but I don't know if it's going to move. But we could try. But what we would like to do, and it is in our thoughts, is to replicate this elsewhere in the same way that Dungeon has been done, Madame Tussauds. We could have one in Amsterdam, we could have one in Berlin, we could have one in Las Vegas, and that's something that we want to explore.
It's all your favourite holiday destinations, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you won't go anywhere I want to go. It's always where you want to go.
That's right. And Blackpool.
Good place to start. Good place to start. Yeah, ideal. Bring one down here to Devon. It would go
New
down.
Nabba. It would go as a storm.
Absolutely.
So yes, replicating this elsewhere is something that we really, really do want to do.
Yeah.
And also the other thing we want to do, or one of the other things we want to do, we want to create a VR experience as well, an Oculus Quest VR experience within the property, so that even if you might be in Wyoming, Utah, Beijing or whatever, you could still visit here virtually and have a tour, even though you're not necessarily visiting Bath.
Cool. Nice segue into the next bit actually then. So without giving too much away, for those who may be listening, watching this, who haven't yet visited, just give us a kind of an idea of a virtual tour, in a sense, of sort of, you know, what there is contained within the building, within this attraction.
Well, it's a multi-sensory, fully immersive experience where we sort of use soundscapes, audioscapes, scents around the building. As soon as you walk into the building, I think you know this is something a little bit different, in that you're greeted with an ominous soundtrack. The building we've dressed up in a way which is faded grandeur. Mary Shelley's story wasn't a glamorous story. She wasn't sitting around sipping tea, eating cucumber sandwiches. The Mary and Percy were quite often on the run from bailiffs and debt collectors. They've been disowned by their families because they'd eloped. Mary was, had a child with Shelley, and so they were kind of on the run, living a rather chaotic, a lot of the times tragic life story, tragic story. And I think so. What we've done with the building, just the general feel of it, is to create that kind of mess where it feels like the building is slightly falling apart. The further you go up, the bigger the cracks become. For the sake of heritage of listening, they're not real cracks, they're all painted. So we've had the plastic set designers come in and just change this building in terms of just superficially. Yeah. So it's painted beautifully, and what we've put in here in terms of props and in terms of sets has just been beautifully made, but again, just slightly faded and slightly crumbling. And so the whole building has a sense of just an undercurrent of sadness about it, because it's not as beautiful as it might be, which is the Mary Shelley story, really. And it's the rooms. Each room has its own scent and its own soundscape, its own musicscape. And so we've tried to create an ambient environment where there's dark lights and flickering lights and smells. And I just think so. And that's just the basic setting. But then we've got things on the walls and beautiful props that have been made, and a visual feast. I say immodestly.
So it's cultural. We were celebrating Mary Shelley. It's literary. So you'll learn a lot about the book and Mary Shelley and her life, and Percy Shelley, Lord Byron. It's at all times literary, cultural, and historical, but it's also super creepy. So we have downstairs in the basement, which one of the reasons why we're attracted specifically to this property is that the basement vaults lend itself to a really wonderful walk-through horror experience. Yeah. So it's a 5-story Georgian townhouse. You go up, you learn that there's Mary origins. There's an area where you learn about the genesis of the book, about elements of where Mary has been inspired by death. There's a laboratory. Where with our pièce de résistance, 8-foot animated creature, which we'll come to in a minute. Yeah. There's elements of popular culture. There's a small cinema screening room where we show the original Frankenstein film from 1910, which is a silent movie, 16 minutes long. And then down in the basement, you go for the proper scare, and then you come in the shop for the merch. But a beautiful thing that we managed to be able to create is our creature. Yeah. Because when people think of Frankenstein, they think of Boris Karloff. They think of the green skin, bolts to the neck, flat-topped head creature. Yeah. But of course, that was just Universal Pictures interpretation. So we went back to the source material, went back to the book, and looked at what Mary Shelley wrote about what her creature was. And we commissioned a company called Millennium FX, a BAFTA award-winning animatronic studio, to come up with our creature. I'm saying creature. I want to say monster, because we've all said monster, but she never mentioned.
I was going to say, she always refers to it as a creature, which I didn't realize till I read the book. you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and people find that very arresting, because it breathes, it looks at you, it has expression. It's within this lighting scape, it's within this theatrically dressed. It's wonderful soundscape that Chris has come up with. And also, we've got this olfactory art going on, so it smells like a biology lab. So you've got all these elements taking place, and people are left breathless.
It's been quite interesting, the creature, because when we had him commissioned, you're never quite sure. There's a part of you think people just want to see the flat top green skin monster.
Yeah.
And so will they be disappointed? And it's not been that. People have actually been quite moved by the creature. They suddenly, and this is when in the early genesis of this, when we were talking to Millennium, as you pointed out very quickly, the designs initially started feeling like a monster, and it's like Victor Frankenstein never created a monster. He's trying to create the perfect human being, and it just turned into a monster from people's perceptions. But and I think that's it. We wanted humanity to come out of the creature. So as you're looking at it, this is a person who you just think must be in quite a lot of pain.
Yeah.
These open wounds, and you just think, and I think that the humanity comes out of it as well. So I think it's a really strong creature we've made.
It's an amazing bit of work, and even though I knew to expect that at some point, because obviously having the hints on your Facebook pages and that was happening, even when you see it, you don't really realize how powerful that's going to be. And exactly, looked as human as you can get in circumstances like that, I suppose. It's an amazing bit of work.
We also have a 7-foot green monster as well, so hopefully no one will be disappointed.
No, but I for one, going back, Frankenstein I discovered it through movie form. The first that I ever knew really of Frankenstein was Kenneth Branagh's '94 movie adaptation. It's always remained my favorite adaptation. I can go to the classic, Karloff ones and that, but for whatever reason, and knowing actually since that is the one that they consider closest to the book as well, I think I couldn't really ever replace that. So seeing your creature looking more along the lines of what I was familiar with in that film, I suppose.
We have a pinball machine.
Yes, I know.
The 94 film.
Again, when we got to that floor, where you've got this room just kitted out with all these bits of memorabilia and everything, and then I saw that, and it took me a moment to really realize what it was actually depicting. I was very jealous. Where did you acquire? How did you acquire that? Just being nosy.
In the quest of actually finding bits and pieces to put in this attraction, I had sort of searches all over the place, and little bells would go off on my computer saying something's come up on wherever it is. I don't know. This happened to be Gumtree, I think.
Okay.
This Gumtree, and it was a gentleman in Rotherham. Was it Rotherham?
It was South Yorkshire.
Yes, he had this machine, and I got an alarm, and I immediately called and said, we have to have that. And he very kindly brought it down himself. He couldn't bear to let a courier bring it. He was delighted that when he arrived here, thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe where this is actually going to end up. So it was, I must actually. And
it's one of the most popular things.
Yeah,
people love it, partly because pinball is addictive, it's fun. But another reason, you don't see them around anymore. My kids, I've got older kids and I've got younger kids. My younger kids come and they just throw away their iPads. They want to play this pinball. They've never seen one, and it's just tactile and fabulous.
Yeah. I was kicking myself really, because I got in that room. I didn't realize it was like a fully working one that you could have a go on until I was just about to come out, and then there was somebody else who had got behind me who then had a go, and I was like, aha.
Chris, come around again. We'll shut the whole thing. You can spend a whole evening drinking Bloody Marys.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds brilliant. Yeah, I'll take you up on that at some point. Absolutely. But going up to so moving across just for a second into the popular culture side of Frankenstein, and again, everyone is familiar with the imagery. Yes, the green skin flat top version, like you said. How do you feel, or why do you feel it's been so popular? How it's been taken so many different directions across the years. What is it about the story that you think is caused that to happen?
I think it's partly because it's as relevant now as it's ever been, and it always will be. We talk about Frankenstein food. We talk about AI. We talk about people in Wuhan laboratories messing around with viruses
Yeah.
and piecing these things together. It's around us all the time. And people, I mean, there was Donald Trump. They were trying to sue Donald Trump, or Donald Trump was trying to throw something out, and he went to court, and the judge called it a Frankenstein lawsuit or something. It's just something that has been kind of hacked and pieced together. That word is
it's part of the language now, isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, the Frankenstein book was the first book that actually questioned when science goes wrong. And that's why it's actually sort of remained. I mean, but even in the 1800s, it started being used as a metaphor in terms of politics and satirical cartoons and stuff, politics and religion and whatever it may well be. And that's the reason it's endured just as more than anything. Is that as John says, that's the key point. It's relevant as a metaphor for so many different things. And it's a great book. It's also about, you know, it's that thing about it's a human story as well.
Yeah.
It's survived for many, many reasons.
But here, I mean, we were focusing on Frankenstein because that's the hook. But of course, we also feature an awful lot of other things that Mary Shelley wrote. And one thing that we discovered, obviously, we put this whole thing together during a pandemic. But one thing we discovered is the
Last Man.
The Last Man.
I know.
Which she wrote in 1826.
I bought this off the back of visiting House of Frankenstein, I will say. So,
which your listeners, readers, viewers might not know, but it's to do with a global pandemic set in the 21st century
and the economic collapse of the world. The only downside, everyone's traveling around in hot air balloons, but you know she could have
get past that.
No, Bristol Fiesta this weekend.
Yes, of course, maybe she was. That's true. But you know, she's an extraordinary person. I think just also going back to something you said earlier on about, you know, you setting this up about what motivates people to write something. What we're doing here, we're not just telling this huge story of Mary Shelley's. It's very much focusing on, we're telling the story, but it's also focusing on what inspired her to write it. Because clearly she didn't just get an idea and write a book. There were components that actually fed into that. And you know, she was a visionary. She did have the way she thought about things generally was obviously a key component, just in terms of obviously the thoughts on The Last Man. But you know, the key elements here in terms of her mum dying at an early age and the death of one of her children and her interest in science and you know her dad's, you know, she was self-educated, Mary. She didn't get a formal education. But all these sort of components that fed into it. But as I said, but within that, within the things, the components that actually fed into her coming up with the story, here was still an extraordinary person who had the foresight to sort of think beyond her own world.
And let's not forget, she wrote Frankenstein when she was 19.
It's impressive, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, looking at what you learn from that first part of the experience, where you really learn about her background, you know, her parents and the tragedies that she lived through early on as well. Again, I never knew any of that. I've not even, I don't know why, but I've not even been compelled. I love the story to death. I've not even been compelled to delve into her story before, you know, visiting House of Frankenstein. It's easy to see, I suppose, how her life maybe shaped her towards this sort of genre. But still, you know, and also in a time when female writers were largely overlooked as well, because I believe, you know, part of it, she released it without her name on it for fear that it wouldn't be taken seriously.
The first edition of 500 copies.
Well, you probably read that critic's board then, the very pompous critic who couldn't believe that one of the failings of this novel is that it was written by a woman. It's this unbelievable quote. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's an unbelievable quote. It's just this pompous fool who made this horrible sort of just dismissed this book because it was written by a woman who's long gone and nobody knows who he is. And 200 years later, everyone's talking about this book. So she's a great character.
Why do you know, if you got an idea why, or have you found out any reasons why her story largely hasn't been told until now?
I don't understand it myself, because you just think it's you know, in most lists it's regarded as one of the top 100 most important books in English literature. She's a, you know, an incredible figure really, in terms of, you know, as you said, the first science fiction novel, one of the most famous horror stories. I don't understand it. I just think it's one of those things that I think this is why the success of this really is just like, how has it not been done before? You know, so this is, you know.
It was, I mean, and going back to what we mentioned earlier, when Chris mentioned it in the pub and literally just mentioned it, And from my perspective, that was it was a total no-brainer.
Mm.
We have to do this. Of all the things we've started and got off the ground, and different projects and companies and organizations and operations and films and theatre and all that kind of stuff, this is absolute no-brainer, because this story needs to be told.
Yeah.
And of course, I've known Chris long enough to know that he would creatively tell it in a fascinating and unique way.
Yeah.
The beauty of this as well is that Frankenstein needs no explanation. I mean, anything that when you have to start, what's your idea? Well, and then you got a 30-second picture. But this is Frankenstein, and everyone gets it. It's just like, you might have seen the section on advertising, where there's this a lot of posters we've got there, or little pictures from magazines, and where the creature or the monster, because it's always the flat top, green skin, people immediately recognize the creature, and so then it's just the joke or the tag that goes with it to sell the product. Everyone understands the backstory. So I think that's the main thing with this. It's just like, anything that doesn't need an explanation has got a head start.
Yeah, no, fair dues.
Interesting, actually. The 1931 movie was, of course, black and white. So there was no green in the whole movie. So it must have just been the movie poster that was green.
No, he was actually painted green, but it was to do with the lighting, because in terms of the film stock, in terms of people's skins, it didn't. It's to do with that. So he was painted so he would look a different shade with the was it a mercury base, wasn't it, the film or something? I can't remember. I can't remember the reason for it, but he did have a lick of paint on him.
Oh, okay.
To actually sort of.
This stuff fascinates me. It really does. So
it was. As you'll know, as you went round, is the makeup artist called Jack Pierce. So Universal would have said, we're making this movie. This guy Boris Karloff, he's going to be the creature in this book. Well, loosely based on this. We want a unique take on what a mad scientist would come up with if he got some body parts and pieced them all together. Now go away and work on that. So it was his idea. It was Jack Pierce, who now is literally universal.
It is. I mean, even going to my little boy is mad on Halloween, so he watches anything, cartoons or whatever. So he instantly he doesn't know the story, doesn't know anything about Frankenstein yet, but he will recognize as soon as I'll wear this T-shirt or show him a cartoon drawing of that creature. He knows exactly who it is. They even used it in things like the Munsters. The look, they didn't reference him as anything to do with Frankenstein, but
same makeup, because it was Universal did the Munsters, which is why the copyright they were allowed to do that same design.
But
it was really since 31 that, I mean, as John said, it's always been in print, but it was after 31 where it exploded into public consciousness. And people embraced the creature. They loved Boris Karloff's performance was fantastic. I know it's very different to what Mary Shelley wrote, but it's still a beautiful, iconic performance. And the makeup is just astonishing, really. When you look at it, you think, "Gosh, and Jack Pierce again was another incredible character. No formal training, taught himself, and he's responsible for the Wolfman, for
the Mummy,
the Mummy, and Dracula. I know Lon Chaney did most of it, but it's just that he's virtually responsible for the most famous, iconic monsters of the 20th century. This one character, so it's brilliant.
They're images and looks that still live up today. You can look at those films and they still look as good.
Well, your viewers will be able to Google, if you Google in YouTube, there's an Apple commercial. There's an Apple commercial that features a Frankenstein character, and he has Bolt, and it's Christmas, and he does some lights through his neck, and it's to do with the iPhone, I think. It's only a few years ago. It's fabulous, fabulous. So everybody's still using that. That image in commercials now, and will continue to do. However, they're going to soon shift over to our new iconic.
Absolutely.
So the Boris Karloff thing is just going to.
I'm going to keep it alive.
Still a fan of that one. I was going to ask, actually, do you each have a favorite kind of depiction of the creature, sort of while we're on the subject?
Oh no, that's daft, because it would say the one that we just made. Because
apart from that
one.
Oh, there's so many ridiculous ones, really. I mean, in terms of perfection, it's got to be the Boris Karloff. But I mean, there's things like we've got a lot of derivatives in the popular culture. So I was a teenage Frankenstein. You got this ridiculous character in there, and then Frankenhooker, which again another crazy derivative.
Oh, Casanova
Frankenstein.
Yeah,
the amorous monster. Each one.
But Bernard Breslau in Carry On Screaming.
Yes.
Was he the monster? He wasn't the monster.
He should have been.
It was the little one. It was what was he called? I've forgotten his name. I don't know.
Charles Hawtrey.
no, Charles Hawtrey.
Can make a monster.
But yeah, I mean, what about you? So, what's your favourite? Well, I guess it's going to be it's got to be De Niro, isn't it?
Yeah. See, again, I grew up with that film. I always go back to that. I have heard not very good reviews of it. Not that I go by reviews or anything, but since I discovered it, I found that it is one of the versions of it that's really been panned by fans, either of the book or the other films or whatever. I guess I have got a soft spot for always, the classic Karloff image is always going to be what comes forth first in my mind. But yeah, I mean, I think just for loyalty to the book, in terms of movie representations, De Niro. I don't think there's anyone. I'm a great fan of Kenneth Branagh anyway, since that film, and I love all the stuff he's done. But I don't know if anyone else has nailed the story as well as him yet.
Or Kenneth Williams. I mean, Kenneth Branagh, Kenneth Williams. I mean, they're very similar characters, really.
Yeah. There's obviously something in the name, isn't there? So
yeah, we had a lady come around today who's part of a tourism company from America, bringing tourists to Bath, and she was saying how Americans think Frankenstein is American.
Right.
It's
yeah.
Universal Studios, but of course Mary Shelley was English, and Boris Karloff was English. It's as English as it gets, but
yeah.
It's the Herman Munster and the Addams Family and all.
That's it. Yeah. Oh yeah, because Lurch as well. Yeah, he was very much in that vein as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Forgetting him.
Yeah.
Bless him. So just touching on a couple of other questions I got noted down here, really. So, what do you feel are the most interesting things that people have or will learn from visiting House of Frankenstein that they may not know before they come through the door?
The creature. I think they'll leave going, okay. Well, two things really. One, actually, Mary Shelley was pretty extraordinary, a great character. I think that the creature was, very different to what they expected. That the creature could talk, was educated or self-educated, and was sensitive. So I think that's what I would take from it. It's difficult to speak seriously when I've got.
Yeah.
The Thing. What was that in the Addams Family? The hand.
There was a thing.
Yeah.
This is real. This one's real, actually. So.
I've only just noticed. Sorry.
I think that's one of the things that we've all enjoyed about piecing this together is it's been fun.
Yeah.
All the people that we've worked on, I remember the prop makers who have created all these things and things around. We thanked them for doing all the stuff that they've done and going above and beyond, but they turned around and thanked us for allowing them free reign. Because sometimes when you're going to make a movie or you're going to do a theatre show, then they have to be very specific as to what they're needed to create.
Yeah.
Whereas we said, just let your imagination fly. And they have, and we've been happy with the result, and they've enjoyed that whole process, really. So yeah, it's been fun.
I had to tell a couple of them off a couple of times, though.
Yeah. Well, they did obviously take things a little bit too far.
We'll have them rein it back a tiny bit. But that'd be brilliant. I think this is the point of it. You approach this with your own vision. You've got an idea, and I think that both of us, you just got to accept you have to value other people's thoughts. Yeah. And then people contribute something. You think, oh my gosh, that's better. That'll move it in that direction. And so we were always willing to listen to people's ideas. And this is what it is. This is not just one person's idea. This is a lot of people, a lot of creative people's ideas here. But that's just actually sort of made something I think quite special. I say that in modesty because it's not. I can say it because it's not me. This is a lot of people.
Yeah.
Speaking on behalf of them, they've created something beautiful.
We've done we did a poster, a kind of a poster, iconic, and we've done it quite like a film poster because what put together is quite theatrical in that respect and filming. And we had to put a list of all the people who have worked on the project and contributed in certain ways. There's about 50 people. Wow. So I mean, we're representing all those, the creative imagination and talents of all those 50 people. So, you know, you come in and you look, oh, that person did that. Oh, we didn't have that idea. That was their idea.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really nice.
It's not to sound too cliche, but it is like you have done your own movie in a sense. You know, it's an experience from the minute someone comes in the door. You know, they live through this story as they go through. So I think that, yeah, that movie poster image that you're talking about, I love the imagery that you've got. Sorry, I will flash some more up. Hold on. But you know, in the
oh yeah, that was done really well.
It's fantastic. You know, it captures all the, dare I say, magic, if there can be magic in this story.
And I think the staff love doing, because they're quite theatrical as well, and they love attending to the visitors and acting throughout the whole process. So one of the things that we will do over the next couple of years is actually make a movie here. We want to do Fright in the Museum or whatever it may be, and actually make a film. It's already dressed. I mean, the set's there.
Yeah, you've done the work and the hard work already, and especially with the creature. If anyone wants to take up that image, like we mentioned earlier, and run with it, you've already done the work for them. You know, so
yeah,
there you go. So just to finish off, just one final question then, sort of the future of where House of Frankenstein can go. You briefly touched on it earlier that, you know, you'd like to open up other sites that replicate it. Is there anything else that you would love to do with this, which kind of takes off any kind of like spin-off, you know, attraction or project?
Next week we're going to see a bus. So we're working with the Bath Bus Company and to do a fright bus. We're seeing an old route master that they're going to provide. We're going to work in conjunction, and then we're going to do a 1.5 hour tour, Bath and Bristol, in an old route master where things happen throughout the whole tour. So we've got that going on. We also want to open some accommodation. So we're looking at accommodation locally to here, where we will have themed gothic sleepovers, scare B&B, and we you know, people can choose mild, medium, or hot experiences. Every year we're going to have a monster ball, so we'll take over the assembly rooms or whatever, and everybody's going to get dressed up, you know, like Elton John dressed up, and we'll dance to the Rocky Horror Picture Show and the Monster Mash.
Wow.
So we've got lots of those elements and other assets we want to add.
But prior to that, at the end of this month, our escape room's opening. So we've got at the top of the building, we've got a dedicated escape room, which is Victor's Lair. And that's really, you're locked into the room. You have an hour to get out, or you become part of Victor's experiments. So it's a quest to find body parts.
We did it. Neither of us have ever been in an escape room before.
Okay, cool.
We loved it. We absolutely loved it.
Well, I panicked.
Even though there were 3 of us who can't see without glasses, and we only took 2 pairs of glasses.
Oh no!
So and it was quite dim. But it was a very exciting experience, and we managed to achieve it with 2 minutes to spare. It was great.
I
cheated though, didn't I?
Did you?
I think I cheated.
Well, you shouldn't tell me that.
It was good fun. It was good fun. So that's opening at the end of the month.
In 2 weeks, yeah.
Awesome. Brilliant. Listen, Chris and Jonathan, this has been fantastic having you on. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Lovely to meet you, and we can't see your viewers, but I'm sure they're lovely.
I'm sure they are. Yes, they are. They keep coming back, so that's all I can ask. So
just for having us on, and hopefully see you here again sometime.
I'll send you through the new trailer we've just made. It's been made by our film director colleagues. It's
do that.
It give your viewers a flavour of what's inside, other than the merch room.
And I will definitely stick that out. So just before I let you go, just let everyone know. I mean, they'll have no problem finding you if they were to type in House of Frankenstein. But just confirm where they can find out more about the attraction, where they can book tickets, everything like that. Feel free.
Luckily, when we first came up with this idea, we were sitting in the pub and we checked whether the domain name www.houseoffrankenstein.com was available. Strangely, it was. So that's where you'll find us. And it's at 37 Gay Street in Bath.
Awesome. Thank you guys again, and wish you every success with it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for bringing it, to bringing it to life. I for one, can vouch for how amazing it is. Everyone can implore. I've been telling everyone about it since I've been there as well. So continued success, and I'm going to be very, very intrigued to see where this can go, and all those projects that you've got sort of in the works. So good luck with them all.
Great. Thanks for your interest.
Lovely.
And support.
No worries.
Take care. All the best.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.